Hey, what's up, fam? So we're back for the third episode of my Clash of Fiction series. The classic style, nerd debate of who would win between character X and character Y. Two characters fighting each other out to see who goes in and out a winner. This just fictional ones are for the pure fun of debate. So this week I've got the characters Erza Scarlet, Titania, Queen of Fairies, the Scarlet Queen from Fairy Tale series, against Harlequin, also known as King of the Seven Deadly Sins, the Sin of Sloth. Right? We have this pretty, I'd say, a pretty nice roundup between these two, who've mostly arranged, kind of cast with some hacks against for the most part, straight on the scene fights, like up close swords. An actual fairy against one just by title, who, funny enough, didn't even ask for her the title of Titania, where it's that's just kind of something she earned. Whereas Harlequin is actually one of the fairy kings of fairy race within the Seven Deadly Sins series. So I'm not going to go over the rules again. I'm just going to put the pictures on the screen, and we're gonna go into this match. We're gonna start out and get right to it. We're obviously first off, we're gonna start with King, Harlequin, King of the Fairies from Seven Deadly Sins. All right, let's go. Fairy King Harlequin, King for short, as the members of his team, the Seven Deadly Sins team, the main group of the series, obviously Seven Deadly Sins, and the Grisly Sin of Sloth. Right, he's a 1,300-year-old fairy. He's actually a royal fairy. His title is actually an actual king position. He is the king of the fairies. He protects them in their realm in this forest, and it's because of that he has his main weapon, which is the spirit spear Chastiful. I don't know if I'm ever pronouncing that correctly. It's been years, and I still don't think I can pronounce it right. But either way, it's a spear, like I said, made out of wood from the sacred tree at the center of the forest, and it has multiple abilities. It makes him more powerful just having it. It gives him things like he's got the most basic one that didn't seem to get an upgrade when it turned it from the spirit spear to the true spirit spear, as he was calling it. It's just like a pillow he can use for melee blocking, but he's also got an actual shield, like a dome that has a protection on it as well as healing. He's got his giant flower, like this big sunflower that shoots energy beams, as well as has these massive whipping tendrils, smacking anything nearby. He's got his increase, which is like this big array of flying knives, they'll go shred his opponent apart like a bunch of knived up piranhas. His guardian, which is a familiar he can use for melee combat. He can open range, block attacks with it. He's got his main one really is his true spirit spear, which is this gigantic, like, hooked spear that upon impact causes immense explosions, and I'll get into the power level behind all that, but keep going down his powers. He's got petrification. He can actually, if he stabs somebody, he can turn them to stone, but this is just with his spear. He also has his power called disaster, which it seems to be his original power, his base one that he, surprisingly enough, doesn't use as much as I feel like he should, given how powerful it is. He can increase things, like he can increase make trees grow, plants grow, but also to the point where he can do it with people as well. He can take like a wound, like if he cut you, instead of like a paper cut, he can make it like you were just slashed with a sword. He can, you just had something toxic that only gives you, makes you vomit. He can turn it into like a horrendous, like, stomach deteriorating virus. It's a pretty good ability. Surprisingly enough, he doesn't use that or his petrification all that much. I feel like they're just some of the abilities that forgotten amongst along the travel of him and his more used ones, which his main one, obviously, his most one to probably use would be between his normal spear, his spirit spear, his true spirit spear, his Chastiful, the really big energy spear, and then the one increase, which is the large array of knives. So kind of just going into, I'll also say a little bit about King himself. So King was the protector of the fairy forest, the kind of, obviously, like I said, the king, his job was guarding them, keeping them all there, keeping them all safe, but unfortunately he seemed to have failed along the line, And after his sister died, he had some emotional problems and kind of went away. When he actually met up with Diane, who we know the giantess that's also on the Seven Deadly Sins team. And because of his time away, the other fairies started to hate him and kind of reject him. And he's kind of like this forsaken king to his people for the most part of the series. Eventually seemed to kind of be cool with him again. But going back to himself, let's go ahead and go over some of the feats and accomplishments that he's done. For one, he's got his abilities killed these high level demons called these Albions, which they seem to be the best thing right before like good demons. They're like fodder soldiers, but they're extremely powerful. One of them is enough to level a small city, cut down gigantic trees with a single swing, cleave up big chunks of hill, just off of normal physical strength. And King was actually able, after multiple power-ups along down the series, with his just not even his biggest attack, just like his increase, he can shred them apart, just one shot them with his strength. That's not even including his true spirit spear, which once kind of upgraded and he kind of got stronger himself, he should honestly, I think he should easily be able to perform attacks, at least with Dolor and Gloxnia, both former members of the Ten Commandments and former fairy and giant king within their own clans, who, if just looking at the attacks, you're able to create shockwaves that can blow up mountains, not even upon contact, just a shockwave from the explosion, or, create tremors that cause earthquakes from a few hundred miles away. These are obviously very important, impressive feats of strength. Definitely he has those downfalls, though. He doesn't seem to be the most durable, but especially he lacks all forms of physical strength. Though he has a very high level of magic firepower, speed, maneuverability, intelligence, versatility, variety. He has the physical strength pretty much of a small child. He has like no muscle on his body, and it kind of is the obvious weakness to him that he isn't the most durable of individuals. So that kind of is just getting into King. So now I can get into his opponent, Erza Scarlet, the Queen of Fairies. Titania, Queen of Fairies, the badass swordswoman of the Fairy Tale Guild. Not self-titled Queen of Fairies, not an actual fairy. It was actually a title given onto her by other people, but it kind of stuck with her, and she just kind of went along with it. It's a very, very impressive person. Just to go over a little bit of her backstory, just really quick. She was abandoned by her mother and kind of lived at this little town called Rosemary before getting taken as a child slave to work at the Tower of Heaven, also known as the R system, to resurrect Zareth, all led by his cultists. She helped start the rebellion, rise up against these people, and then through some events, I won't go too deep into it, ended up kind of wandering around in Fiore, and ultimately coming across the Fairy Tale Guild. So Erza is for the most part, she's a melee swords user. She's got some other weapons. She's got some spears, lance, axe. She's even got a bow. For the most part, we'll really stick to swords, and it's not for something like getting into people with crazy abilities. Her powers seem more towards utility and variety. She's got not only swords, she's got a lot of swords, and that includes ones with elemental power. She's got water swords, wind swords, she's got fire swords, and it's not just normal swords, it's also the armors that give her different abilities like speed, durability increase, resistances to specific elements, the ability to cut magic, and even one that definitely is my least liked of the one, but a very useful one, is she has this kind of like vagabond cloth armor. I don't know why it's even called armor if it's cloth, whatever, that throws away all stats and converts pretty much everything into attack power and speed. Very consistently done, actually, throughout the manga, and that's exactly what it does. And I'll kind of look at some of that too. But she's got just pretty impressive feats. She's got pretty ridiculous pain tolerance to the point where she fought somebody who, a scratch to her because of having her sense of pain amplified horrendously, goes up to the point where it feels like having a chunk of your body just blown off, just cavitied out. and had none of her other five senses, but she was able to still fight. And so I know there's a bit of negativity towards that feat within the fan base because people thought it was dumb. I was just like, it's pretty impressive on her. It can be explained, but for the most part, the fact that she can fight with none of her five senses while amped up on pain is pretty impressive. Not only that, she's taken slashes from a sword that can cut through dimensions, and she can casually, without any form of armor buff, cut through, well, I can tell probably like 6 inches to a good solid foot of steel. Not only that, she's actually she's got a couple pretty big feats of her own. She's a way weaker version of her was able to take the mass magic of an entire island drawn out and put against her. And she was even able to match up in speed and power with a meteor that traveled like from deep space, planets distance away, multiple planets distance away, and smash it and destroy it and keep fighting. And that was while half of the bones in her body were all broken. Erza is definitely a very will-based fighter, just trying to keep going even when she should be down, and continuously going against opponents that have her on the ropes, but for the most part, as I was saying, through the cloth armor that I'm not too fond of, but winning a lot of times through that. Only that, she's got just some pure raw stat increasing ones like her armed or fairy armor, but probably one of the most useful ones is her Nakagami armor, which gives her the ability to cut and dispel magic, able to cut through it like it was nothing, but also cut through space itself. Something that would mean that with that ability, she should be able to bypass someone's durability and deal direct damage, even with certain if you had someone with a higher level of defense than her previous attacks, or someone with a seemingly impenetrable defensive ability, something that's able to cut through space would mean that that defense is completely moot point in all of this. But will she be able to take up against her opponent, Fairy King Harlequin? I started there really badly for a second. No, we'll have to wait and see. Erza is a very, very seasoned veteran fighter and able to command hundreds of swords, as well as even casually, I think between like 8 to 10 swords, like it's nothing. So we'll have to wait and see how she does against the Fairy King Harlequin in their match. Let's go. After looking over everything around this fight, it kind of came down specifically to very, very minimal things that should be a factor, but unfortunately aren't. So I won't go too much into that. So kind of just looking at each other, King definitely has the time and rate kind of advantage. The fact the dude is over 1,300 years old. He's been at this game a lot longer than Erza, but Erza has pretty much been fighting since she was 5 or 6 nonstop. King spent hundreds of years just kind of chilling in a forest, not doing too much, and it's actually really going to hurt him, the fact that his durability is so low in comparison to Erza, but he's definitely got some abilities that would put her into a rough spot, that being his petrification ability. Obviously, he's able to get into stab in, then he's going to petrify her. And now, if you think back with Erza, and when she was petrified, turned to stone by Evergreen during the Fighting Festival of Fairy Tale arc, back in, I think it was about 103 to about 132, I think the chapter numbers were, but, you can go look. It dispelled on her in half the time, but that wasn't because it was petrification. It's the fact that she has one fake eye, and ocular abilities only have half level of potency and time on her. So obviously, if it was something like Mangekyo Sharingan, someone like Itachi used the Tsukiyomi on Erza, instead of the 3 seconds that feels like 3 days, it would be 1.5 seconds that felt like a day and a half. It's just kind of going with the level comparison. But obviously, King's level of petrification isn't the exact same. And his other ability that would be, very largely useful here is this disaster, where he can turn a cut and turn it into a whole lot. And someone like Erza, that could definitely prove very detrimental. She's not somebody who can, heal or deal with the ability in a large sense. But when it came down to feats of strength, feats of accomplishment, it was a very one-sided bout. One of the things that kind of hurt King in a large way is the fact that his durability is very weak, where Erza's is very strong, and though his petrification ability would work very heavily on Erza, he doesn't really use it in fights. Someone don't have to correct me, but I know he hasn't used it in a long time. I don't think he's used it since his initial use back when he used it against King Bon, and I don't think he's used it since getting his True Spirit Spear back. And I think that's very harmful to him and his disaster, though, most opponents, you'd be able to put him down just based off of the sheer pain you'd be able to inflict. It use his increase to, deliver a dozen, 100, 1,000 cuts on somebody, and then use disaster, increase it to, pretty much just bleed out or drop from pain. But it's not something that would really do anything to Erza. Like I said, the fact that she was able to keep going when she had pain amplified to where breathing brought her to tears, then she should be fine in the way of that. King definitely had range on her. He had the fact he can throw his spear like miles. The fact that he can use his increase from hundreds of meters away. He's got the beams and the lashes from his sunflower. He's got his guardian to jump in front of attacks, tank them. He's got mild level of healing as well as shielding from Erza, but Erza legitimately just kind of smashed him in multiple different areas. One, the fact that she was able to tank, not even really tank, just keep fighting from Ikaruga slashes that cut through dimensions, and the fact that they didn't just cut her in half was, a pretty impressive feat on the literal physical strength of her body, as well as, obviously I said, the pain withstanding of her. And her Nakagami armor would play a very, very, very big, counter to King, because King he's not someone like, for instance, Jalal, he fights both hand-to-hand and range, so he's able to, even out. If he's fighting a guy who is weak to hand-to-hand, he can go to range. If he's fighting somebody who, is ranged, he'll go hand-to-hand. He'll switch it around, but King is very long-ranged, and it isn't just that he fights long-ranged, he needs it because of poor durability. Whereas Erza's Nakagami armor, she can cut through any of the attacks he sends her way, and she'll have no problem just kind of closing that gap. Not only that, she is horrendously faster to a disgusting degree and has a higher level of power. When I was talking about the fact that King's attacks, his big attacks should definitely be on level with Dolor and Gloxnia's more casual attacks. Not their yawn I'm an attack, but definitely an attack that they didn't put nearly as much effort that King has been able to show. And I'm not going to argue, his base power level is like 43,000 and theirs is like 50,000. I'm not going to go into that. It's stupid. Power levels are inconsistent in Seven Deadly Sins, and you know it. But just looking at the numbers, or not even actually just looking at the numbers, I'm trying not to do numbers too much. If you go by the fact that Shockwave from Dolor's Gigafall was able to shake, cause an earthquake a few hundred miles in diameter, which is pretty big, pretty impressive. And you have the shockwave from Gloxnia's as a big beam attack. I don't remember what the name of his spirit spear, the first one, is called, but that's not important. The shockwave itself was tearing apart mountains. That's not the blasting of mountains. That's just a shockwave. But Erza, the fact that she was able to jump into a meteor that was traveling from deep space planets away, in the time it took for her to lean upwards and then slash into it, something that was going to destroy the whole country. And if you compare, unfortunately, Britannia in Seven Deadly Sins is the size of the actual one in real life. It's only a few hundred miles across, where Fiore itself is larger than the USA. Last time I checked, given the fact that Demaria said that they were 30 kilometers from the shores of Hargion, and then said that the distance for them to Magnolia was 400 kilometers, making the gap between Hargion and Magnolia 370 kilometers, and the width of Fiore itself is somewhere around 5,500 to 6,000 kilometers. That's massive in comparison. Even I like how I used miles for Britannia and then went to kilometers for Fiore. But just compare it, it's 20, 30 times larger. And even though it was during the point where Irene cast Universe 1 and compressed Fiore down to 1/20th its size, that still means that the density, the mass is still there. It's just way more compact, and this meteor was going to destroy the whole place. So she definitely has durability, strength, speed all on King. But then King, having the few things that he has against her, he barely uses, which is very unfortunate for him. So I really just determined as the fact that though King definitely has hacks to take her down, petrification, disaster, they're not something he uses in character. So I'm going to crown the true ruler of the fairies within this one to Erza Scarlet. All right, so thank you very much for listening to this, and I hope I hope you enjoyed it and came all the way through, and you will look forward to the next one. I know I'm still trying to think of which one to do next. If you have any suggestions, drop them below. And until then, thank you very much for listening.